Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne. I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, the reasons behind their creative decision-making, and what photography means to them. Blake Rudis is a US Air Force combat veteran and classically trained artist whose creative roots began in painting, printmaking and sculpture before his focus shifted towards photographing the American landscape. After earning his Bachelor in Fine Art from the University of Delaware, Blake discovered photography in 2006, blending his deep understanding of aesthetics and colour theory with his growing passion for the natural world. Through his platform, F64 Academy, Blake has become a respected voice in the photography community, helping thousands of photographers elevate their post-processing skills. Known for his wonderful Photoshop workflows, Blake's teaching emphasises the artistic side of editing, encouraging photographers to see beyond the technical and embrace creativity. His collaborations with companies such as Topaz Labs, Plotagraph Pro and ON1 reflect his influence across the industry, while his self-published work further showcases his dedication to education and artistic growth. In this conversation, Blake reflects on his path from traditional art forms to photography, sharing insights on colour theory, the role of editing in shaping vision, and the evolving challenges photographers face in a digital era shaped by AI. He also discusses the balance between shooting in iconic landscapes and maintaining personal, artistic expression, offering valuable lessons on creativity and resilience. Blake's story is one of constant evolution, artistic curiosity, and a commitment to guiding others in the pursuit of meaningful photographic expression. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Blake. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. You're someone that I have wanted to talk to for quite a while, and I got to admit, I'm a big fan of F64 Academy and the stuff you do, and I personally have learned a hell of a lot from you, from looking at your Photoshop videos in particular, the editing process. And for me, I think the real thing that blows me away is the deep knowledge you've got around colour theory and how that actually works within tools like Photoshop, because that's one of the things a lot of people struggle with, I think, when they're doing their editing, is actually getting colour right. And I personally think the stuff you're doing is absolute gold for people that are wanting to learn how to improve their editing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Why don't we start off with how you got into landscape photography first, and then we can talk a little bit more about how that's grown into what you're doing now with F64.
Sure. So a long time ago, back in like 1998, I guess it's not that long ago, but I started playing around with the camera in the film days. We're going to roll my own film, doing stuff in high school and stuff like that. But I went to college for printmaking and sculpture of all things. And when I graduated, it was very difficult to do anything with with printmaking or sculpture, because I needed print presses and I needed welding stuff, and I didn't have all that. So I picked up a camera so that I could, like a digital camera, not a film one. And I would drive up and down the California coast and just photograph things that I liked that I could put into my paintings, because at that time I wasn't really a photographer, I was more of a painter than a photographer.
Okay.
I would just kind of do my own composite work, but with paint. So if I wanted a telephone pole or something like that, I would have to go out and photograph a telephone pole, and then I would paint that. And back then, that was early 2000s, it was hard to find stock to paint from. So if you wanted it, you pretty much had to either do it from memory or go out and chase it. So as I started to do that, I started to really enjoy the act of photography. And then living in the Bay Area with Yosemite 3 hours away, Tahoe 2.5 hours away, and all these beautiful locations around me, I started to just take my camera out and photograph the coast. And then I realized I really liked photography a lot more than painting. And there was this tipping point in 2010 where I still had an art desk. I can remember it. I just bought a new one over here some odd years later, but I had all my paints on there. And I remember having this turning point where I was like, you know what? I just don't feel like I like my painting anymore. I'm just going to go all in on photography, and specifically landscape photography, because that's where I got the most joy. So that's pretty much how it started. It was more of And by necessity, I've been an artist my whole life. So photography is just where I've landed as an artist.
So it's just an extension of that artistic expression that you've basically had your whole career.
Yeah. And I would see all this amazing landscape photography and I would aspire to that because I just loved how they were able to almost make photographs look like paintings. When you see a really good landscape image, it'll hit you like a Thomas Cole or an Albert Bierstadt painting will. And that's where I got my inspiration from to really try and chase my own landscape photography desires. And I think there's a big part of that is adventure too. As a landscape photographer, you packing your gear up and you don't know what you're going to get, but there's sometimes even just the adventure is better than any of the pictures you bring home. So that's what I enjoy the most about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess with painting, were you painting landscapes or was it a mix of genres?
It was a mix, really. I enjoyed sometimes doing realistic landscape paintings of the San Francisco Bay Area, the bridges and stuff like that. But really, I liked to paint things that would make you think, like a parking garage with a bed in the middle of it. It was like the idea was, to us, it's a parking garage, but to somebody, sadly, especially where I lived in the Bay Area, that was somebody's temporary home. So I would make these kind of things that would make you think. Someone think, I would never want to sleep there, but someone does. Not necessarily what they want to do, but that's how it is. So I would make these abstract paintings. I'd make kind of like my own composite work. I would do a mix of things. But for the most part, it was at that phase of my painting career, it was more of I was doing a lot of abstract work specifically to learn color. So some of these things were just lines, just the stuff that you would see if we're being honest, the stuff you'd see in a museum and say, well, I could do that.
Yes.
That kind of stuff.
No. And I guess taking that, you mentioned understanding color. And as I said, it's one of the things that sort of stands out in your videos. Taking that across to your photography, where did you get that deep understanding of the editing tools and editing suite so that you could actually apply what you already knew in your artistic or painting endeavors and bring that across into your photographic endeavor?
That kind of started, there was a series I was doing, and this is funny because this will actually lead into the photography aspect of things, but one of the things I wanted to do was a diptych, two images that are exactly the same, but rotated on one another. So whatever I did on this one, I did on this one, and I did it complete opposites. But then what I also did was whatever color I used on this one, I wanted to use the opposite color on the color wheel on the other one so I could make a complementary series of a diptych of one image and the other one to see if I could A, paint something exactly the same but opposite, and B, get all of the colors to match perfectly. Well, I figured the only way for me to really test this is if I photograph both of them and then invert them in Photoshop. That will tell me if I have the colors correct. And I remember being so frustrated. I was so frustrated. I about ripped my hair out when I brought them into Photoshop and I inverted them. And the one that I thought would be inverted to look like the other painting looked nothing like the other painting. And I was like, this is weird. So I inverted the other one to look like that one. And it didn't look like it either. I'm like, this is wild. I wanted to give up on painting and art in general. And it's funny because that actually kind of led me into this whole color theory world of like, why did those paintings fail? And what I found out in the whole process is that there's actually two color wheels. There's a digital color wheel and there's a pigment color wheel. So if you're trying to invert pigment colors in a digital world, you're going to be inverting pigment colors in a digital world, which is going to give you the digital opposites. So now I'm really upset with myself because I think I burned those or threw them away or something like that. But it's one of those things that they are probably accurate in the pigment world, but they weren't accurate in the digital world.
Yeah, Phil.
But that's what really opened my eyes to like, hey, if I'm going to learn color, I have to learn all the aspects of this, both in the pigment world and how that would translate to the photography world.
Okay. And in learning how Photoshop manipulates color, not just using that digital color wheel, but also which sliders do what to what colors, because one slider will actually just do tonal adjustments while another one will actually change your reds or your cyans or your yellows and so forth. So how did that sort of thing develop for you?
That kind of came from the whole painting world too. It's like when you have a palette and you got that palette on your hand and you got all the paints in front of you and you grab this paint, you mix it with this paint, and then you get the color that you want, and the whole mixing process, that's almost exactly like working with the selective color adjustment layer, where I've got red, but that red doesn't have enough magenta in it. How can I get more magenta into the red? Well, that's going to be selective color. You're not going to be able to do that with the HSL adjustment layer. So a big part of that is understanding what tools are going to force color into the image, what tools are going to modify the color that is present within the image, and what tools can I use to modify the properties of a color. There's 3 properties every color: hue, saturation, and luminance. So a lot of times we reach right for HSL, and HSL is a great tool, hue, saturation, and lightness tool. But there's other tools that are so much better when it comes to color, like the selective color adjustment layer, which is literally, that is, if there's any tool in Photoshop that mimics painting, it's the selective color adjustment layer.
Yeah.
Which typically we use that for printing because it's a CMYK control. And if you talk to somebody in the printing world, they're going to say, we can use that CMYK to force a little bit more magenta or a little bit more cyan or whatever. But the opposite of cyan, magenta, and yellow is your RGB. So the opposite of cyan is red, opposite of green is magenta, opposite of blue is yellow. So, when you know that, you can use a selective color adjustment layer to really manipulate any color to make any color look like anything you want. There are some boundaries there, though, especially in the landscape world. We aren't trying to make our trees look like cotton candy pink unless you're working in the infrared world. But it's all about, I think this is the thing that I think a lot of photographers don't realize, is that your camera, I don't care what camera you have. Right over here, I've got a Sony A1, and next to it, I've got a Nikon ZFC, and next to that, a Nikon ZF. And then I don't care what camera it is. It does not capture period. No. It doesn't capture the color that you see, and it doesn't capture the dynamic range that you see. A lot of people don't take that extra step or go that extra mile with the color because and many will have it as a badge of honor. Almost, I don't do any color work with my images. I just use exactly what I was given. And that's great if that works for you. But once you realize what you can do with color, it will not be okay with you. I promise everyone who would even doubt me on that one, I'd put money on it. Couple $100 if you wanted to. Once you realize what you can do with color, you don't say that kind of stuff anymore because you understand what you can do with it.
Yeah. I think one of the best examples, particularly the selective color that I've seen from you, was how to actually bring out the tones you want in black and white images using things like selective color, HSL, etc. But I think it was a 3 or a 4 step process where you actually go through. You don't just hit the black and white button and say, I'm done. You go through this process and you then adjust how much magenta is in the whites or the blacks and so forth. And you can actually very selectively change if you look at that as a color image, it looks atrocious. But if you do it right in black and white, it gives you that fantastic monochrome look that you really want. And I think that in itself is something that just blew my mind when I started using that process after watching one of your videos. Was just like, oh, how did I know this?
There's that old adage, if it doesn't look good in color, change it to black and white. And man, I'm telling you, that's one of the worst. You can't do any more injustice to black and white or color by saying that. So I always tell my subscribers, if you hear that from any photo educator, run, because that means they don't know what they're teaching you. And I will stand behind that. And a big part of that is I had a question today on my live event where someone was asking me how the tools and stuff that I use translate to black and white photography. And to me, I look at black and white photography as a finishing effect, not the starting point.
Yeah.
Because from every good black and white image comes from a good color image. So those who know how to work with color really well will know how that color will translate into tonal value. The worst black and white, or the absolute worst black and white you can possibly do, is to go into the HSL adjustment layer and drop the saturation. Because then you're just telling every single color that it's its highest potency of color to turn 50% gray. That's what desaturation is.
Yeah.
Better methods are like the gradient map, where the gradient map actually maps out the tonal value for a color. So for those who might be listening to this, blue is a darker color than yellow.
Yeah.
If you have full 255 blue, though, and you change that to black and white, it'll be a deep color. If you have full 255 green and 255 blue yellow, that will be a light tonal value. But if you were to desaturate that, they're both the same tonal value. So it's like, why would you do something like that? So I think that when you know color to a point where you can make a good color image, you'll be the best black and white photographer out there, period.
Yeah, fantastic. The other one that I think a lot of people get tripped up on is contrast adjustments and using curves adjustment layers. And even though they may only affect certain regions of luminosity values or whatever, depending on how you've masked up your image, you still get these bizarre color changes just by tweaking. And you don't have to tweak much to get some significant color change, particularly in the reds and the yellows for, say, a sunrise or sunset photo. And you get these people putting these things out that are just, it looks like they've just taken the saturation slider up to 11, but it's actually a curves adjustment or a contrast adjustment, which has actually caused the issue. And I think a lot of people really struggle with getting that right and getting the tones and the actual colors in those, particularly those yellows and reds. Greens is another one that if you're doing a forest, the spring, summertime forest shot. But yeah, they're the ones that I think a lot of people really struggle with. And again, your videos have really helped me change the way that I edit and therefore change the way that I look at those images and how they actually, start to appear.
Yeah, and so the curves adjustment layer is an adjustment layer that will force color into a place where color doesn't exist. So it's good for people to know that if you take the curve and the blue curve and you throw the blue curve up, it's going to go crazy. So there's two things you can do with that. You can either drop the opacity down to 10%. That'll make that curve, you can really push it and get it to go a little bit further without it being too garish and nasty and getting some color into that space. But then when you have like selective color adjustment layer, that adjustment layer, especially when it's set to relative, only works on the relative data that is in that color. So what that means is that if your image doesn't have any green in it and you go in the greens and you move a green slider, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you had a curves adjustment layer and you throw that green curve, it's going to flip all kinds of green in there. So that's where I think the experimentation process comes in. And okay, what I tell people most of the time is, okay, if you really want to understand curves, play with curves for 8 hours straight. Don't use any other tool but curves for 8 hours. And then anyone who does that is going to get really good at it. But a lot of people just want, how do you get so good at color? I don't know. Like I spend every hour of every day that I'm not working on my business inside of Photoshop working with the color tools. And that's somebody who's been teaching color theory for 15 years, but I love it. I love color. I really do. Yeah. And I know I take a lot of flack from my peers, man. I don't care. Like I'm not afraid of color. Me and Gavin Hardcastle go back and forth on that quite a bit, but yeah, I don't care. I love color. It's expressive.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing is that you've got to express what you want to express in your images, and people forcing their rules or their set of values or whatever on other people in their art, I think is probably one of the most damaging things in photography, in the photography community at the moment, is that people are saying, oh, I get it all right in camera and I don't do any editing. And it's kind of like saying, okay, I've got a negative and I've turned it positive, but done nothing else to it.
Yeah. Look at my contact sheet. Isn't it great?
Yeah. It's kind of, well, you're missing out a few steps in the process. What you're doing without doing dodging and burning, and what you're doing, and I'm taking it back to the film development days.
Yeah.
Just those tools that were there back in the day, even if you go back to the beginnings of photography with glass plate and silver nitrate and all that sort of stuff, the values that they were using to get the tonal ranges, etc., that they wanted in their images made a huge difference to the image that people see. And in all honesty, if you're not understanding your darkroom, or in these days, Lightroom processes, you're missing out on so much value in expressing yourself with your photography. And that's not to say, if you don't want to do editing, I don't care.
Be honest about it.
That's right.
Don't throw me under the bus because you don't want to edit your photos.
Exactly.
I love that because I get that a lot on YouTube. I get these comments like, that's not something Ansel Adams would do. I'm like, have you read any Ansel Adams? Like in the book, The Negative, which is one of the best books anybody can ever read, even to this day. It was written in 1980 something or other, like right around when I was born, of all things. And in that book, he says, in the future, there will be a digital image, and I can't wait to see what the digital image affords. he was the kind of person that if he had Photoshop, you better believe he would be loving it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I don't get. So hold on a second. You're going to sit on your high horse and quote somebody that you don't even know that wouldn't even be that way. It's like that. Those are the types of things in our industry that just need to stop, in my opinion. It's like, there's no room for it. People make art. That's what it is. It's art. And if you don't want to consider it art, then that's fine. But I don't know. That bothers me a lot because I get that quite a bit. It's funny because the other day, someone actually told me that I was a purist. They were like, "Oh, I think you're a purist." And I'm like, "You think I'm a purist?" Let me tell all the purists that, because
that's funny.
I got a kick out of it. I laughed.
I'm sure. We've taken a bit of a deep dive there into color theory and a few things. Let's talk a little bit more about the photography side of things and your enjoyment. Sure. You mentioned the adventure. Is there a time that you can remember where the adventure was better than the end result?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was actually in June. I went out to Great Sand Dunes, and my oldest son is 14 now. And I made a house rule because they all want to go with. I have 3 boys, and every one of them wants to go on every photo trip with me. I'm like, look, you got to be at least 13 or 14 years old before you can, because A, I need to be able to sit in the front seat because the whole Jeep is packed. And B, I need to be able to stay up late and work horrible hours. So my oldest son went with me to Great Sand Dunes, and it was going to be a rocky trip because the rain like crazy and not knowing how it was going to turn out. But just the idea of going on that adventure with him and just letting him see some of that stuff and almost seeing it through his eyes too, influenced my photography in a very different way, because the stuff that he was attracted to versus the stuff that I would normally shoot made that a different photography adventure for me that I probably wouldn't have had the same if it wasn't for him being there. It wasn't necessarily a crazy trip. It just made the adventure a little bit different.
Yeah. I love that. Sorry?
The most recent crazy one that was really like an adventure was with Gavin when we were in Glacier last year. He wanted to go to Hidden Lake, which is like about 3-mile hike. And everyone was coming down because we saw a storm coming, and everyone was coming off the mountain. He's, "Oh, we're going up." And I'm like, "I don't know, man. That doesn't sound like a good idea." But it was great because we had the whole Hidden Lake to ourselves. There was nobody there, but we were working between rainstorms and hail. Just getting pelted with hail while you're watching rainbows fly all over you. This is what it is, man. This is what landscape photography is. When you get those moments, typically the best times I've found are the times when you don't want to go out. Those are usually the best times because that creates the best images and the best adventure.
Oh yeah, that weather just before and after storms is the best. I think it just creates the best scenes, the best skies. That kind of thing is really when you want to be out. I don't know. I'm not a storm chaser by any stretch, and I don't know about running around in a van chasing tornadoes and that sort of thing. I'll leave that to the guys that like that.
That's my neck of the woods. That's literally right. Not even 5 miles from where I live, I could do that. But I don't. I got the kids.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm the same. Mine are a little bit older than yours, but they're truly worth more than the photo that I could get.
Exactly. Those guys are trained. I would go with a trained professional all day long.
Oh yeah, sure.
But I wouldn't do it on my own. I had one time that is a crazy one. So one time on my birthday, my wife asked me I said, "Look, nothing against you guys. I just need to get out. I'm going to go." So I went to the Tallgrass National Preserve, which is right out by where I live, about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. And I was staying in a hotel, kind of like down here. It's just south, I guess, if people aren't watching this, but I was in this southern area. And there was this beautiful location I was photographing. There was a barn, and right behind the barn was a storm. And there was lightning behind it with the sunset. It was gorgeous. So I'm like hyper fixated on that. And then I turned to my left and there's a storm with lightning and rain. And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I look to my right and there's another one. And I'm like, "This is awesome. I'm surrounded by thunderstorms. I can just, and I wasn't getting rained on. I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever." Little did I know, my phone's like blaring at me, like tornado warnings, literally right where I was standing. So I got my car and I called my wife. I'm like, "Hey, you got to find me an exit strategy because I've got a tornado behind me. I know for a fact that if I don't get out of here, I'm going to be dead." She said, "Just go back to your hotel." I said, "I can't, because if I do, I have to drive into it. That's like really where the eye is. I got to go south." So she was able to go on Google Maps for me and coach me through it as I'm driving, trying to get away from this storm. It's just coming in behind. Those 3 storms converged and then eventually turned into a tornado. But I ended up going north about 30 minutes, then west about an hour and a half, and then south about 30 minutes, and then east about an hour and a half, just so I could get back to my hotel in one giant square without getting hit by the storm. That was probably the most adventurous, crazy thing I've ever been in, but the pictures were just amazing.
Fantastic.
It was great. Yeah.
Do you remember the first landscape photo that you took that you made you feel, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do now. This is really where my head is at.
Yeah, I do. I used to live in California near the Bay Area, and I would go out to like Highway 1 and photograph the coast. And one of my favorite places to go was just outside of Big Sur in a place called Bixby Canyon. There's a bridge called the Bixby Canyon Bridge, one of my favorite songs, and then also one of my favorite places to go. And I remember photographing it for the first, it was in 2010, and I was right about to go to Photoshop World. And that's actually pretty significant. I'm excited to go to Photoshop World for the first time, never been before. And I will go out to the Bixby Canyon Bridge, I photograph it, I bring it home, and it was the first image that I could actually feel the composition, the depth that went from the foreground all the way to the background. The bridge was there. And it was probably the most mild HDR treatment I think I've ever done when I was in my HDR Kool-Aid days. But that was such a paramount image for me because not shortly after that, I went to Photoshop World, and that's where I got the itch to want to teach photography. So as soon as I got back from that, I started my blog, which at the time was called everydayhdr.com. And that picture was the head picture that was basically the one picture that was inside the HD and the R the whole time I had that blog, because it was such a paramount image for me. Clouds were perfect. The light was perfect. It was just before sunset. But you couldn't make for better conditions. And that was probably the first image that I finally was like, this is it. If I can reproduce this, then I've got it. Because we go through that time where we really want to do something, but we get so frustrated with our own art because it's not looking like we want it to. And I think that's the focal length was right on point. The composition was on point. The tone was on point. It was like everything was just clicking, firing on all cylinders. So that image still to this day is probably my favorite landscape image.
Yeah, fantastic. And in that sort of inspiring you, what was it that I guess made you then say, okay, was it the decision around Photoshop World and going, okay, I want to become an educator? What was it that sort of triggered that in your mind?
I just fell into it. Honestly, like at that time, I was a parachute rigger at the Air Force Base there working for pararescue guys. So my job was to literally hang out with the biggest dudes in the Air Force. And I then was also working out 2 to 3 times a day. Photography really was just a mild hobby of mine. It wasn't really something I was wildly interested in. And then my wife, of all people, was like, you got to go on this photo walk. And I'm like, I don't want to go on a photo walk. That sounds like I'm going to be hanging out with a bunch of nerds with cameras. I don't want to do that. She was like, I want to go because it's in Sausalito, which is on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. She was like, maybe we can grab a hotel there, get some good food. And it's like a little, kind of like a fishing wharf town that we really wanted to explore a little bit more. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Let's go. So she signed me up for it. And the guy running it was this guy named Matt Kliskowski. And I had no idea who this guy was. So I'm like, sure, sounds like a fun thing to do. So the whole time I'm talking to this guy, Matt, he doesn't know photography. He's even asking me like, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing HDR. He said, that's a unique way of doing HDR. How are you doing that? So I'm explaining it to Matt as if this guy knows nothing about photography. He's the only guy there without a camera. So I didn't even know who this guy, I had no idea who he was. And I talked to him for about an hour and a half as we're walking around, and he's like, hey, you should go to Photoshop World. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like my wife and I had just gotten married. We didn't really have a whole lot of money. She was pregnant with my first son. He's, here's my card. Shoot me an email if you want to go. So I said, all right. So I shot him an email and said, hey, I met you on the coast. Just thought maybe I'd say hi about and learn more about this Photoshop World thing. So he ended up giving me a really awesome military discount. And I said, I got to go now. So I went to Photoshop World, not even knowing who this guy was. Yeah. Then I get there and he's one of the headliners of this. I'm like, who is this guy? So I see him out later in the convention area. And I'm like, dude, you never told me you were like this big, like rock star of Photoshop and photography. He's like, man, I want friends, not followers. Come on, man. He's like, how's your wife doing? I'm like, you're asking me out. Who is this guy? And he was such a good guy. No. So then one night he said, are you going to this after party thing? And I said, I'll think about it. Honestly, I didn't have the money, so I couldn't do it. Yeah. But he's like, just show up. It's sold out, but show up and I'll get you in. So I did. I showed up and he tapped the security guy on the shoulder 10 minutes before the doors open. He said, get that guy. And he pulled me in. I was hanging out with Scott Kelby. And I just felt like these guys are celebrities and they just pulled me in to say hi. I'm just a nobody, but they're all so cool. And as I was talking to Matt about it, he's like, you should start a blog. And I was like, I guess if Matt Kliskowski tells you to start a blog, you do it. So
Definitely.
so I did. I got home and the whole drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, I got to come up with a name. I got to do this. And the idea was everyday HDR, meaning the everyday normal person can be taught how to do HDR photography. Because HDR, as garish as it was a process, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to simplify a very difficult process. And that was actually if I didn't get into HDR photography, I probably wouldn't be a photographer today. Because HDR photography was the most like the painting process. I didn't like taking pictures and editing a single photo. To me, that was just, A, it felt too easy, and B, it didn't feel like an art form. So what HDR photography provided me was this process, I've got to take 3 pictures, turn those 3 pictures into 1 picture, then manipulate the tones and colors because it looks like crap, and then really finesse this thing into an art. And that's where I really started to enjoy the process. And as I was putting stuff on this blog, just put it out there for my friends and family to see, people started to see it around the internet and then asked me if I could teach them. So I started doing YouTube videos. I honestly accidentally fell into everything I'm doing right now. None of this was scripted. It was just, okay, see what happens next. And then being a parachute rigger, I got to go to some really cool places with these guys and jump out of airplanes and do crazy stuff and see the world and photograph the world in ways that I probably wouldn't have if I wasn't into it. So it was really cool.
I love that. Do you have a process for setting creative challenges for yourself?
Not really. My process is actually critiquing others. It sounds weird, but on my subscription website, I do this thing where I critique images. And what that shows me, that's where I get all of my creative problem solving from. And it's really because I see these images come in and I desperately want these people to be able to make the best art they can make. Because I know what it's like to be in that position where you've got this thing inside of you and it feels like it's just ripping and clawing to get its way out. And it's so frustrated. And then when you show your work to somebody and you think that's the one that's going to release this thing, and they look at it and they're like, oh, that's cool. And you're like, but it's amazing. And they're like, yeah, that's good. I hate that. To me, that's like a 3-year-old that gets an ice cream that they've been waiting in a line for 45 minutes for, and they drop it. That's what that feels like to me. Like that almost brings tears to my eyes. So in the critiquing process, I have to take these images they have the good bones, they have good composition, they've got good structure, but there's just something about it that isn't right. Whether it's the tones, it might be the colors, it might be the effects that they put on there. Something's not connecting with me. So in that process, I find the challenge of how can I take this that I cannot connect with this person's image? How do I take that and turn that into a connection that I can have with that image? And what I've found through that is that has made my work exponentially better because I don't critique in a negative way. If you've ever seen a critique, I just did 30 of them over 30 days, but I try to be as kind as possible and just not say what's bad, but what's a disconnect, because there's a difference between what's something that's bad and what's just not making a connection. I find that when I pursue this and I help these individuals with their creative challenges, it helps me with my creative challenges. And it's always about the connection. I think the best images are going to speak for you when you're not there to talk about them. Your colors are going to speak for the image. Your tones are going to navigate beautifully. Your composition is going to make them want to sit there. When all 3 of those come together, it's like an orchestra. It's like a symphony. Yeah. The last thing you want is to go to a symphony and hear a flute go, oh, it's not good. But you see some of these images and the colors are going like, okay, hold on a sec. It's not jiving. You don't get a good music from it. A big part of that is just, I honestly do a lot more for other people's work than I do my own. I'm lucky if I get to shoot 3 times a year, but I've made my business out of helping other people make their stuff better. And in the process, it helps me make my stuff better. But yeah, I don't really do a whole lot, honestly. And that part does get to me. But in this stage of my life, it's actually good because I've got 3 kids. I've got an 8-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And I really don't want to miss their life by being gone for weeks on end. I did that in the military. And once my 20 years was up, I didn't want to have to do that again. I like that I can make my schedule my own. And I go on maybe 3 trips a year if I'm lucky. And I'm perfectly 100% okay with that. But I get most of my creative challenge juices come out by looking at other people's stuff and helping them make them better.
Nice. With those trips, are you doing a lot of planning? How do you connect with a place before you photograph it? Are you using instinct, research? What sort of things are you looking for when you're saying, okay, I want to go here?
I over-research first, a lot
Okay.
of over-research. I actually bought a VR headset so I could go into Google Earth Pro. Yeah, and I will go to locations in Google Earth Pro in my headset before I actually even start the process of planning. So what I'll do is I'll look for, if I'm going to Yosemite, I'll look at like the iconic shots of Three Brothers and stuff like that. And then I'll do the research that I find online, but then I go on my VR headset and I fly there and I can find compositions. It's beautiful. Like Google Earth Pro in VR is a fantastic way to do research, because I did a video on this about, oh gosh, it must have been 5 years ago on my YouTube channel, but I showed how that process works, and it was crazy. The craziest thing, I've actually photographed Three Brothers right there at the Merced River, just looking at the Three Brothers. And then I went into the VR headset, found the exact same composition, and I took a screenshot of it. And then I brought them into Photoshop, even show this in the video. And you can reduce the opacity of the photo and see the VR image coming through. And even some of the lines on the top of the mountain are identical.
Wow.
So some of those places are really scripted out, especially national parks. Now, if I tried to go to the Tallgrass National Preserve in Kansas, it's all flat, doesn't have any real architecture to it. But national parks or major places like that, I can do that with Google Earth VR. So my process usually goes like what most people do, searching it online. And then I use ChatGPT quite a bit. I'm a guy who has, like I said, 3 kids. And a lot of times when I go on a photo shoot, it's 3 days. And that's 1 day travel, 3 days shooting, 1 day travel home. So I've got 3 days, maybe 3.5 days to shoot. So I'll go into ChatGPT and say, I'm going to, let's say, Glacier National Park for 3 days. What are the I can't miss locations, and throw in like one like really long hike. So it'll do the whole thing for me. And then after I get that from ChatGPT, I'll make sure I do some background research on all of that stuff, because it's AI. I want to make sure it's correct. And then once I do the background research and I find all the places I want to go, I go in the VR headset and I make sure it's a place I want to go. And then I've got a list of iconic locations before I even go. And then I get in the car, do the scouting on the first day usually. And then after that, I pretty much have outlined the locations that I'm going to want to photograph while I'm there, depending on where I'm going to be. But that's pretty much how it goes. A lot of scouting, a lot of driving. Pretty much if I'm not shooting in the morning or the afternoon or evening-ish, I'm driving. It's like my son, he was like, I can't believe we drove 12 hours today. I'm like, we only drove like the span of 5 miles, but we drove for 12 hours. I'm like, that's what this life is like, son.
It's landscape photography.
Beautiful, and it sucks at the same time. Get used to it.
Yeah. You talked about having that limited time. Do you find that makes it more urgent for you to find your compositions and get there and get the shot? And that give you a sense of urgency in the field? Or do you just try to slow down and relax a little bit and say, okay, whatever happens, and I'll do what I need to do to get the shots that I want?
Yeah, that usually depends on the location a lot. Some locations, like Great Sand Dunes is the perfect one. I love that location because there's a lot packed into a really small place. But the first time I drove through there, I was like, this is it. When you stay there for 3 days and you just stay in that little pocket park, it's great. Now, 3 days in Glacier versus 3 days in Great Sand Dunes, that's a night and day difference. Glacier, when you're only doing 3 days in Glacier, 5 days in Glacier, it's almost not enough time, because there's a lot of locations you're going to want to go back to multiple times, and you're just going to have to say, it's not going to work. Which one's the most important one? But that's why I like places like Great Sand Dunes and smaller places like that, especially on those shorter trips, because I can really shoot a lot of it and get exactly what I need. So a lot of times I'll set myself up for success like that. Places I like to shoot are within a 12-hour drive from me. That way I can get there and not have to fly anywhere. But Badlands is a great one too in South Dakota, because that one is, it's not a very big park, but it is a big park. It's one of those places, it's like a choose your own adventure. Parks that get to me are like Yosemite, Glacier, Olympic, where you have so many great places that you can go to, and you have to make a sacrifice on one location.
Too many options, so you got to narrow it down.
Yeah, it's going to a Mexican restaurant versus going to a 5-star restaurant. And there's a lot of a menu to look at in a Mexican restaurant versus a 5-star restaurant that's going to say, we're only serving you this tonight. That's what Great Sand Dunes is like. It's you only get this.
Yeah.
So that's what I really enjoy about some of those smaller parks. But I don't think it really gives me a sense of urgency per se. Being a former film photographer, starting out that way in the late 90s, I'm very selective about what I want to shoot anyway.
Yeah.
I don't like to cull. I really don't. Most of the time while I'm on a landscape shot, I can tell when I click that shutter, which is the image I'm going to use.
Okay.
And a lot of times I will. On the A1, I've got an audio recording button. And what I'll do is as soon as I take it, I'm like, okay, Blake, this is the one. Don't even worry about the rest. This is the one.
Wow.
And then when I get home, that little audio clip is right next to that image.
Yep.
And that whole sea of stuff that I shot. And a lot of times I'll just double click that one and I'm good. I can just edit that one image and I'm good. I'm done. I don't need to edit anymore. And that's usually what happens. Now I've got a stockpile of images that just are begging to be edited, but I just don't have the time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask, are you straight into editing when you get back from a trip, or do you leave things to marinate for a while? It sounds like you've got to get straight into it and go for the winners.
A lot of times I get straight into it because what I'll do on my trips is I document all my trips for my subscribers on my subscription site. So what I'll do is if I'm going to Great Sand Dunes, I'll make a live event just for Great Sand Dunes and I'll just rapid process all my photos rather quickly. The beautiful part about this new panel that I've created is I can record every button as an action. So these high-end fine art images that I edit, I can just record that one process once and then press play on multiple images and it looks fantastic. It's like almost it's cheating is really what it is. But yeah, so what I'll do is I'll show them everywhere that I went and I'll give them a KMZ file that has all the drop points of where I went. That way, if they want to do that, then they have that availability to them. So I usually do get right away to it. But that's usually just for preliminary edits. And then usually through that process where I'm making that for them, I find the gold nugget images that I'm going to process later. And then usually I'll process those ones after that event. So on every trip, I plot it out where I'm going, bring it home to them. I walk them through it, talk them through it. And then, so I have to get right to it. But the ones that I'm really going to marinate on, I do let it sit because I'm a big fan of letting your vision have a play on that and not just edit for the sake of editing. So for those ones, I am editing for the sake of editing because I got to get it out. But then I have those little ones that I'm like, okay, I'm going to hold off on this one. I'm going to put over here and then I'm going to edit that one later.
Okay. And for those that don't subscribe and don't understand your editing process, those particular images that you're putting aside, how long are you spending in editing one of those and how much experimentation are you doing with the edit on those ones?
The experimentation process is a lot lower than you'd think. And that's because I do a lot of that on other people's images. And then I just kind of, I've got a stockpile in my brain. Yeah. So through the critiques, I know pretty much what's going to work and what's not going to work. So I use my visionary panel to process this stuff. And that is basically the culmination of 15 years of education in a teeny tiny little remote control. So all the stuff that would normally take people a long time to do, I can edit a fine art edit image in 15 to 20 minutes. It doesn't take long. It just depends on how extensive I want to get with it and how much work needs to be done. But the thing is, like, we do a lot as landscape photographers, we do a lot of really hard work, tedious work with tedious masks, tedious things. So I took all that stuff and just turned it into a push button action, depth masks, push button, luminosity mask, push button. Like, all that stuff is just, I want to get all the hard stuff to be easy so that when I get in there and I want my vision to come alive on my image, I don't have any of those creative barriers getting in my way. It's like, I don't want to have to think about what kind of mask I'm going to use. I don't want to think about it. I want to be able to just edit my image and not have to worry about all the stuff. And then a lot of times, if you don't have that kind of push button access, that you'll forget about things or not use things that would make that image great. For me, it doesn't take long for me to edit. I used to take 3 hours on an image, sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours. And there's a lot of things that have made our life easier. Our camera sensors have gotten so much better. Our editing process and the raw process, not just with masking. A lot of people like rave about the masking, but if you ever install Photoshop CS6 and double click a raw file and try to process it, it looks like dog water. So it is nasty. It's muddy. It's gross. What is going on here? Dog water is a term that my kids use all the time. Sometimes I play Fortnite with them. Like, you're dog water, Dad. Yeah, I know. I'm not good at the game. So the raw process, just even in the movement of sliders, like the movement of sliders, Adobe has done some wizardry in the algorithm that when you move a slider in CS6, when you'd move a slider, it would look really bad and it wouldn't correct itself. It would just look really bad. But lately, you move the exposure slider and there's maybe sometimes a slight hiccup and then the image looks really good. So what's going on here? It's almost like they've got these like governors or things or boundaries in them that won't let you do something really bad. So the editing process is actually a lot smoother and a lot simpler than it ever was. So it doesn't take nearly as much time as it used to 10 years ago. It was a process to create a really good landscape image. But now I don't think that process is nearly as hard because of A, the technology, and B, the tools. And when you make your own custom tools, it's like a furniture maker. A furniture maker makes a jig so that when they cut something, it's always cut perfectly. It's the same thing we do in Photoshop.
And it saves time because you can go back and do it again.
Yeah. And if you do it with actions, you just record it. And then let's say you've got 5 images that all look very similar compositions, similar lighting. You can automate the whole process. So I don't spend 3 hours editing 10 images now. I spend 30 minutes because it's push button. And then after you push the button, it's not a preset. When I'm not talking presets, I'm talking fine art level stuff.
Yeah.
That you just press play and then you go and modify all the stuff. And you have to modify it a little bit from image to image, but for the most part, I've cut my editing process way down. And a lot of that is I enjoy my wife and my kids, which is fortunate. So I don't have to spend as much time editing. Some people use it as an escape. I like those people.
I think for some people, some of the people that may say, I don't like editing or I don't want to edit my images, some of those harder processes, creating some of the masks and things, are some of the things that put people off, because the multiple ways of doing almost exactly the same thing in Photoshop, Legion, there are just, for certain things, there's, I think, about 10 or 15 different ways that you could achieve exactly the same result. But
yeah, and I don't understand that concept.
No, neither do I.
I look at it this way. It's, if I was a chef, okay, would I want to cut all my vegetables, prep everything, and then have someone else come in and cook everything?
No.
The joy comes in with the editing, with making the food.
You hire somebody to do all the prep.
So why would I not want to edit? I don't understand that. That's where you get your vision in the image. That's where you make the image feel like the feeling that it is. You don't get that from the camera. You get that from imbuing yourself in the image. That's the way I look at it. You are imparting a piece of yourself with every single image that you make. Some people don't look at it that way, and that's cool. I just want to talk to those people and be like, hey, let's have a Zoom call or something. I want you to see what's on the other side of this.
And I think your demystification of some of those umpteen different ways of doing the same thing is one of the great things on YouTube and the internet. And yourself, Greg Benz, and a few others that are out there that really understand editing and the way that Photoshop changes things really does make a difference. And every person that I talk to that sort of says, how do you edit your images? It's really about saying, okay, sit down, go to F64 Academy, go and check out Greg Benz, go and check out.
Greg, actually, he lives not too far from me and he comes to Kansas City quite often. So we'll get barbecue together and we'll be sitting in a restaurant after we eat for 4 hours and they're not even bringing us drinks anymore. It's, hey, we're still here. We could talk for hours. I love that guy. He's such a good dude.
Yeah. But it's that demystification, I think, that really makes a big difference to a lot of people and helps them get better at their own editing. That complexity that is inbuilt into Photoshop. Now, it is a bit of a double-edged sword. It does make it intimidating for beginners, and it does make it very hard for people to get their head around, particularly when you get into Photoshop itself. Lightroom aside, you get into Photoshop and you start to introduce layers and how you can actually play around. And the order in which you do things makes a difference to how the end image ends up. But that same complexity also brings so much power and capability it is kind of like your chef analogy is really good. You've got this guy that's used to doing stuff on a sort of a gas stove, camping stove, and he's all of a sudden in a commercial kitchen in a 5-star restaurant, and he's going, okay, what do I do first? He's still a great cook.
Yeah. And the way I look at it is like this, like the reason why I use Photoshop in like 2018 was basically when I said, I'm not using anything else but Photoshop. I get emails from every single photo program out there wanting me to teach their stuff, and I won't do it. I don't care how much money they're going to offer me. I don't care how many programs they're going to offer me. It doesn't matter to me because I'm not going to use it. The way I look at it, it's if I played football, like American football, this is Mahomes, right?
Yep.
If I'm going to be on, if I want to play football, like if that was my goal, was to play football, just like everyone here wants to be a photographer. If I'm going to be a photographer, if I'm going to play football, would I want to spend my whole career on the high school playing field? No. Like at some point you graduate and then you go to college and you play on the college field. And then if you get there, if you become one of the best, you get to the NFL. And I think that anybody who wants to be a photographer should have the same kind of desire for themselves. To me, some of just the simple editing, just raw editing to me is like playing football on a high school field, maybe college field, but it's not the NFL. You're not going to have that same high caliber level of stuff. Like people will argue. I know right now people are probably going to hear this and say, what about the masking? It's so great now. It's not. Wake up. Look at the masking in Lightroom. It's atrocious. It's good.
Okay,
it's good
for some things.
Yes. For minor things. But if you want to make super high-end level landscape photography, in my personal opinion, you got to get into Photoshop because you have blend modes, you have blend if, you have opacity, you've got fill, you've got color tools that people would drool over if they really knew how to use it. I think a lot of times, and I teach in this space, all I do is teach Photoshop. So I know this very well, that when people start to understand Photoshop and when they start to understand those tools, they say, okay, I get it. You were right the whole time. I get it.
That's it. Yeah.
But until they get to that point, I get spears thrown at me sometimes because I don't use Lightroom. Okay, that's great. I've been told I'm not a professional photographer because I don't use Lightroom. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, hey, where do people come up with this stuff?
I don't know.
Trolls.
I personally don't use Lightroom, and the main reason I don't use it is actually the catalog.
Yeah. I don't like to be micromanaged.
I hate the way that the catalog works, and I also hate the additional space that it takes up. And unless you understand how its archiving works, and you are forced to manually manage that archive as well, that thing will just sit there and eat your hard disk until you've got no more, until you actually understand. So I just use good file and folder management in my raw operating system, and then use Camera Raw and Photoshop. Camera Raw is just to take it from the raw to something that I can actually work with. And then Photoshop is all about, okay, this is now where I get down to the fine detail, mask the bejesus out of it. And you get to a point where you go, okay, I'm happy. I can put that out into the world.
And here's the thing. Here is the 100% honest truth. If your image is on a wall and someone buys it, they're not going to ask how you made it. So what does it matter?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like those people that are throwing spears at me that because of some of the stuff, it is what it is. I didn't start this fight. I get picked on because I don't use Lightroom. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, I don't care. I really don't care what they use. What I care about is, are they getting their vision across in their image? And is that image making the connection that they want with their viewer? If those things are done, it doesn't matter where you did it. It doesn't matter how you did it. If you got from point A to point B and you go from camera to the wall and it looks great, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And I'm not going to walk into a museum and look at photography and be like, oh, it would have been better if they used a luminosity mask. Nobody cares. At the end of the day, nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's just how you get from point A to point B and who you talk to. And everyone's going to have a different process. And I just really thoroughly enjoy the Photoshop process. And that's why I want people to feel the same way. I just know that a lot of people are intimidated by that process, and it doesn't have to be intimidation. And then when you get to that point, you'll realize that there is so much that's afforded to you in a program where you can do anything. I don't want to be held back. I don't like being held back. And if I feel like a program is like keeping me from, if it's keeping that thing inside me caged, I don't want to use it. I want everything. That's why I've enjoyed Photoshop so much. And I know that puts me actually in a strange box in the whole education sphere, because there's not as many people that want to do that.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot more lucrative if I taught beginners at the Lightroom level rather than trying to find those who want to graduate to the Photoshop level. Because a lot of people that are in the Lightroom level and only in Lightroom, but aspire to want to be in Photoshop, hey, come on over. I'll talk to you all day long. I love that stuff. I just don't like it when people put up a stiff arm and they're like, no, like, this is the way it is. No, don't make always and never statements. Always and never statements are going to paint you into a place that you don't want to be.
Absolutely.
So
Put you in a box you don't necessarily want to be in not maybe 6 months' time, could be 5 years, 10 years down the track. But at some point, you're going to go, okay, that's not me anymore. I really need to change what I'm doing.
you're always going to want more. At some point, you're always going to want more, and that more is
Absolutely.
waiting for you. There's just not a lot of teachers in that space. Not really. Not in that high-end space. And I don't even think I'm at the highest end of the spectrum. There's
Wow.
many that have gone before me and still do that are much higher level than I am. That's just where I enjoy it. That's where I enjoy teaching. And there's a certain science to it, and I like that. I like the dork nerdiness that goes into it. That's where I get the most happiness. With the nerdier I can get in Photoshop tutorial, the better the tutorial is for me.
Which is weird coming from where you did, where you're saying, oh, I don't want to go on here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's on a photo walk.
See, that's the thing. I was opposing nerd. When I joined the Air Force, I was still a nerd. I just lifted a lot of weight so I didn't look like one. But yeah, no offense to anyone out there.
Have you got a favorite location that just keeps calling you back that you just got to keep returning to?
Olympic National Park's my favorite. I love Olympic. Yeah, I love the fact that's based on mood. When you go to Glacier, it's okay. I can only see so many mountains before I'm just sick of mountains. Where Glacier is awesome because you can go into the mountains, and if you're sick of mountains, you can go chase waterfalls. If you're sick of waterfalls, you can go chase the forest. If you're sick of the forest, you can go do sea stacks. And like within 45 minutes of staying in like Forks, that main area there, you can branch out and go to so many really awesome places. And the wildlife there is amazing. To me, that is, if my wife would let me, we would move to Olympic National Park and I would become like a outdoors, like landscape photography hermit. At that point, I would probably, if I lived there, I would definitely change what I do for a living. Like here, I teach the high-end Photoshop stuff here because I live in Kansas City, Missouri, which you can only photograph that city so many times. There's only so many broken down barns you can photograph. And at some point, it just isn't that epic, grandiose stuff. So when I moved here, it was actually great. It was great for my career because it forced me to have to teach things that I like, editing processes, rather than teaching how to shoot or doing workshops. But if I lived in a place like that, I'd be doing workshops, 12 workshops a year. I'd be out in there all the time. I love that. But I tell my wife all the time, like the first time I went there, I left a piece of my heart there and I'm trying to find it because every time I go there, I love it more and more. And it always calls me back.
You can always retire there.
Yeah, maybe. Depends on where my kids go. I don't know.
Yeah. How do you think landscape photography has shaped your relationship with the natural world?
That's a good question. It's definitely shaped my appreciation for it. I love it. I love being out in God's country. I'm very close to my faith. I'm very close to Christ. And I think that when I'm out there, I feel it. I see it. I see exactly what he made. And it just brings me to tears sometimes, honestly, that we get to live in a place like this. There's all this chaos all the time. We live in convenience society. I want this. I need to go here. I need to get this. Everything's so fast paced. But when you grab your camera and you go out into the landscape, you might just sit there for 4 hours waiting for the sun to set. And you could sit there for 4 hours waiting for the sun to set and be moving all over the place. Or you could bring a journal with you and just look at the place and write and enjoy it. And that's really what I enjoy the most, is just sitting in those spaces in the quiet and just reconnecting. And it recharges my battery. It's one of those things where if I haven't gone out in a while, which it's been a while, my wife will be like, you need to go somewhere. Go. Take a week and go somewhere. And she'll shoo me off because she knows that I need to get back out there and that I need to get recharged and recentered. So when I come back, I've got not just data to work on, but almost like a new philosophy every time I go somewhere new. And that's, I think, what I love the most about landscape photography is just slowing down and connecting. You don't have to, it's not like portrait photography where you're guiding someone and telling them to move here and do this and do that. It's not like wildlife photography where it's almost like hunting, where if you don't get what you wanted to get, you're upset. You get what's there and you have to work with it. And whatever light you get, whatever conditions you get, it's what's given to you that day. And to me, there's something beautiful about that sometimes I feel like I'm going to give you the best light you've ever seen, but I'm going to do it at the least time that you expect it. And then I'm like, okay, I see you. I see what you did there. And I love that. And there have been times where I've been on location. I have wept because it's so beautiful when that sun sets and it hits you and you feel the warmth, especially a cold afternoon or something like cold evening. And then, man, the drive home was my favorite because I always make tea and I put it in one of those containers that stays warm all day long. I'll even make it at 8 o'clock in the morning and put it in this container, and I don't open it until I'm done for the day and driving home. And it's the best, a nice warm tea on the drive home, and just to wrap everything up, it just feels good. I don't know. When you think about it, I guess I really haven't sat down to think about that as much as I have right now, but all of that just comes together to make it a beautiful experience. I love it.
Fantastic. What do you do in those times when inspiration is a bit lacking and you're sitting there saying, I'm not really feeling it? So I get the times when the wife is saying, you're looking a bit itchy there, you need to get out. But when the itch has been scratched and you're sitting there going, I'm not feeling it, how do you get over that and how do you get around that sort of lack of inspiration, for want of a better word?
Gosh, I don't know, a mentally abusive relationship, I guess, with that. I'm the kind of person who I don't settle. And I'm one of those people who I think inspiration is not something that's like in the ether. It's not something that's in the dust that just, oh, I'm inspired. Look at that. No, to me, that's a cop out. I'm sorry. I was an art major and I saw the people that would come into the room and be like, I'm just not inspired to work today. It's like, guess what? You still have to do it. Like, have your pity party and then get to work. So for me, I think that if my inspiration is lacking, it's usually because my motivation is lacking. If my motivation is lacking, that's a personal thing. I need to look at why my motivation is lacking. So I just inwardly search a lot if I'm out of inspiration. I think a lot of times people get uninspired because they don't work through the uninspired part. You're going to be uninspired until you start doing something. And then when you start doing something, you'll get inspired. Like the act of movement will make you inspired. So just start doing. So for me, I don't get uninspired. I just continually push myself through the uninspired part. I don't let myself have too long of a time to just sit there and say, I'm uninspired. I don't understand that, honestly. And I didn't understand it in school either, which I was a very prolific artist in college. I was always moving, always working. I had 4 jobs while I was in school too. For me, I think lack of inspiration is a lack of strong work ethic. I hate to say that for people who might be uninspired right now, but if you are, I would say look inward and where is your motivation? Where do you get your motivation from? And if you can reach into that, you'll find your inspiration. So just work through it and try to stay motivated, because usually motivation and inspiration, in my opinion, they go hand in hand. Other times you just might not be passionate about the thing that you're working on. And if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to do your best work and you're going to get uninspired too. So there's almost like pillars that you can lean on. I did a video about this on YouTube about inspiration. And there's certain elements that go into it: motivation, passion, the idea. So if you look at that, is your idea not strong? Because if your idea isn't strong, you're not going to be inspired. Is your motivation not there? Because if it's not there, you're not going to be inspired. Is your passion not there? Because if that's not there, you're not going to be inspired. So look inward at those things and really deduce where that's coming from. And sometimes you just need to work through it. Sometimes you just need to say, okay, I got to work through it. And I guarantee you that if you go into Photoshop or whatever your favorite editing program is at that time and just say, I'm going to work through this, take an hour to do it, you'll get inspired. You will. I just don't get uninspired. I really don't. That's a very rare thing for me anymore.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the best and or worst?
The military probably did that to me. I would say that the military did that to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that certainly instills a discipline in thinking around, okay, I might not want to do this right now, but I gotta. So
you got 72 hours before you're going to be in Afghanistan. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. I guess I got to get motivated, but you never know when that's going to happen. So that's kind of what I got from the military. But yeah. Sorry, I interrupted your question. I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I was going to ask, what's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
Gosh, I'd say the best piece of advice is start a blog. That was from Matt. And the worst piece of advice is if it looks bad in color, change it to black and white. Just to circle it back. But yeah, I'd say definitives like that. I think those are all pieces of bad advice. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really keep a record of that stuff.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool.
Yeah.
What do you see as photography's place in society, and where do you see photography going?
That's an interesting question right now, especially with AI on the rise and AI-generated images. I tend to think of it like we're in a new age of invention. And it's almost unfortunate. When we think about art in society over time, art has always been given names. You had the futurist movement, Impressionism, post-Impressionism, Renaissance, modern. Are we still stuck in just the modern time? Because those art movements, some of them only lasted maybe 20 to 30 years, and then there was another movement, and then 20 to 30 years, and there's another movement. Have we been stuck in a weird, can't classify? I don't know. Like, I don't really know much about art history other than what I took in college and what I do on my own. But that's what I find is a negative for our society when it comes to art and photography, is that we are in the wild west of art creation.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't have a name or a place, and because nobody cares about names or places anymore, it's not a very good place to be. Social media, I think, has destroyed art, in my opinion. It's made art almost something that we are entitled to rather than something that we get to see. And people look at that as I can take whatever I want, whenever I want. And that's not how art is supposed to be. And it doesn't help that books in the past have been written like Steal Like an Artist and all this other stuff. Like, we were in an age where if you want to make a name for yourself in this, you have to work very hard because it's heavily saturated. And we also have a lot working against us with AI. So that's the part that I really hope that as a society, and I'm not talking like the society of photographers, because we can all get very upset about the fact that you can generate an image of Olympic National Park like that, and AI can make it in seconds. The average person that wants a picture for their wall sometimes doesn't care where they get it from. The average person doesn't care unless they're an art collector. So if the average person doesn't care where they get their art from, as long as they have art to hang on their wall, then we're in a bad place, because someone that has ChatGPT and Magnific, or Midjourney and Magnific, or Midjourney and Topaz Gigapixel, you can make anything you want and upscale it and make it the size of a billboard. Yeah. So that's where we're in a weird place with photography in our society that I honestly have no idea. I have no idea where it's going to go, but I want to be one of those people who ebbs and flows with it. When I don't want to be the person who has horses that's pissed off because the car came out. The car came out and it changed the way that we do things. Obviously, AI is here, guys. It's the car. Okay.
It's being built into your cameras now. And phone photography in particular is just going to go even further with AI, I believe.
Computational photography is going to make my job very difficult. Once these camera companies start putting more computational stuff in their cameras that makes an image look really good just by the click of a button, because that's not hard to do. No. That's where I think that we're going to have some trouble. And that's why I'm glad that the camera companies haven't done that yet. If they're listening to this, I hope they don't. But the concept there is that a lot of what we do can be scripted in the editing process. Definitely. As I just said, when I record an action in my visionary panel, I can press play on that on almost any landscape image, and it'll look really great. What that means is that one thing is almost like layers that are just being put on top of it. If that's the case, computational photography can make our jobs really hard. What I see in our society when it comes to photography and art in general is confusion. Just a lot of confusion, not knowing the place on where we are, not knowing the place on where we stand, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. Yeah, that's what and it's unfortunate. And honestly, when I was in the military and I was a first sergeant, that was my second job in the military. I was basically the right-hand man to the commander kind of thing, where I'd have to help them with guidance and advice when they would come out with stuff. And I always told them, if I don't have a solution to a problem, I don't want to put that problem in front of you unless I can tell you this is the solution. But honestly, right now, it is very hard to see a solution in this problem that we have. And that's why I think we just hear more and more problems coming out about AI rather than having some solution for it. And we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow with AI. It keeps getting better and better. I did some videos about a year and a half ago where I was like making fun of AI generated images because like, yeah, that sucks. Look at them, nailed it. Good job. But you do that now, man, these are good. They're really good. They're
I've
still
taught us how to
missing that
count
soul.
fingers.
Yeah, the fingers, just that is what it is. But they can make a good tree. They can paint some pretty happy trees. If you ever generate some landscape images, they look really freaking good. So that's where I see some danger in our society when it comes to photography. And I see a lot of saturation. I see a lot of dilution, and I see a lot of downfall for it, honestly. But what do we do? What can we do other than ebb and flow with it and go with it? That's all we can do.
Yeah. I think learning what it can do for you is one of the key things to take away from the changes that AI are bringing is work out how you can make it work for you, but not necessarily. I personally don't want to see a day where you can just say, edit this image in the style of, which you can do to a certain point now, but where that just becomes the way that images are edited. I'd much rather do some of those. It's kind of, okay, I can go to IKEA and buy a flat pack, or I can build a chair. And in photography terms, I'd rather be the chair builder than the guy selling flat pack.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I use AI so much in my business. It is unbelievable how much AI I use in my business. It probably saves me about 80 to 85 hours a week of work. I'm working exponentially fast. There is no way that I could have done what I did with my 30 days, 30 critique sessions without AI. I was using ChatGPT for a lot of stuff. I used it to write code for my website so that I could pull images and have them put in a spreadsheet for me. There's some wonderful things that we can do with AI. And what I'm doing with AI in the future is I'm actually making a chatbot of myself that will be able to critique images, and it's really good. And what I mean by that, it's so good that it can coach you on how to use my panel because it knows my panel because I've educated it on all that stuff. So this chatbot is so good that if you upload an image to it, it'll tell you how to edit it and make it better. So I love those capabilities for AI because I can't be there for everybody to do a one-on-one session with everybody. But if I can train a chatbot to basically be my mind and to really help and coach people through this stuff, that's a phenomenal use of AI. It's obviously not going to be me. It's not going to be that, but it's as close as possible. It talks like me. There's sometimes when I'm talking to my chatbot, I haven't released it yet, but there's sometimes I talk to this thing and I literally feel like I'm talking to myself, and it's the creepiest thing. I even told my wife, I said, when I die, you can still talk to me. And she said, that's the scariest thing I've ever heard. I said, no, you can. Trust me. It'll sound just like, we can record our voices to it now. I can even talk back to her.
Oh, that is wild. That really is wild. I can't wait to see that, Blake.
It's wild, but it is very good. It is very good. It is so good that I took some of my portfolio images and put it into this chatbot, and I had it telling me what to do to make them better. And I humored it and said, okay, what did you do to make this better? And then I walked through all the steps, even was telling me what opacity levels to put certain things at, man. I'm telling you, Grant, this is the way of the future, and it's wonderful. But those are those things that I think will be good for the future because they can be used as tools to help. But tools that supplement and take away what we do, I don't think that's a good idea. But that's what's happening. So what I've done with my subscribers around this topic is I've charged them. I've given them a call. Yeah. If you don't want AI to replace you, you're going to have to learn it, and you're going to have to be better than it. So how do we make images that are better than AI generated images? Because I will tell you this, like I analyze images, and when I analyze images, I analyze paintings from 800 years ago all the way through AI generated images, everything. So in this analyzing process, there is a way that an image looks. Like you can tell when an image looks good. And AI is very good at making that look. Now, it might mess up the details, but that look is really good. That look when you see it, when you see like the Josh Snow landscape photo, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at the way he just has everything, foreground to background depth. It's perfect. That is something that is trainable, really. So I don't know. I fear what it could do, but I think that if people were to take this as a call and as a charge, that they need to make themselves better Investing in knowledge is going to be the best thing you can do. Invest in knowledge. Invest in the knowledge from the greatest educators out there and learn how to be as best as you possibly can. That doesn't have to be me. Everybody who's teaching, absorb everything that you can and become the best out there. Because if you're just striving to just hang out and make pretty pictures, I'm sorry, you're going to get swallowed by AI. It's going to take you just like a wave in Oregon when you're not looking. All right.
Yep.
It's going to get you. But if you're there and you're saying, okay, I know that I can make the best images possible and I'm going to do this, you're going to beat AI and you're going to stand out. The cream always rises to the top. You don't want to be sitting at the bottom of the barrel when AI gets as good as we know it's going to get, because that's going to make it's going to force a lot of people, even if it's not taking their job, they're going to see what it's doing and say, dang, why should I even bother? That's self-defeating. And any self-defeating stuff like that has got to stop. If you're going to be the type of person who wants to stand out, you cannot be self-defeating. You're going to have to take the call. You're going to have to get motivated. You're going to have to stop your inspiration pity parties, and you're going to have to fight through this. Honestly, it's a fight. Like, you're the Terminator now, right? You got to take this guy on. Otherwise you're going to get sucked under.
Yeah. That's fantastic advice, Blake.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Are there any photographers out there that you think I need to be talking to on the podcast?
Do you know Josh Snow?
Yes. I haven't spoken to him yet, and I haven't lined anything up with him. So definitely want to get hold of Josh if I can.
Yeah, he's a great dude. Josh Snow, Gavin. You had Gavin Hardcastle?
Yeah, I've had Gavin on the show. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It was fine.
I know. I love Gavin. We have this banter. We really do each other, I think. But no, he's good. Matt Klaskowski, great dude.
Yep.
More into wildlife stuff now, but definitely still very knowledgeable in landscape stuff. Those are like the three main people that I talk to quite a bit in the photography world, as far as the educators and stuff. But I'm stuck in my own little bubble. I don't really branch out of it too much. But yeah.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you for that. I've got one more question for you, and it's one that I've been asking since the beginning of the show for everyone that comes on. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No.
I had a feeling you'd be a no.
No. Pepperoni, yes. Pineapple, no. I don't even like grilled pineapple.
Pineapple's not bad, but
I don't really cooked fruit unless it's an apple pie. I don't really want cooked fruit. I don't like grilled pineapple or grilled apples or anything like that.
Oh, wow. Grilled pineapple it's a wonder in its own right, I think. I think it tastes...
It loses its sweetness and then it becomes all sour and stuff.
Not if it's done right.
Yeah, I must be doing it wrong. I have to hire that chef to do my cooking for me, so I can prep it for him.
Thank you so much, Blake. It's been wonderful having some time to spend with you, and really appreciate your generosity in sharing some of your stories and some of your knowledge, and very much appreciate what you're doing on YouTube. So thanks for being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Grant. This is great. I really appreciate it.
Cheers. Have you had anything to do with editing your images that has struck you as a problem? I recommend that you go and talk to Blake if you want to become a subscriber of his, or you go and see his sites and his YouTube channel in particular. If you haven't seen any of that, you really need to. I'm going to include links to everything that he's got there on his website in the show notes. So make sure that you check Blake and his stuff out. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Photo, YouTube, and Facebook. Don't forget to comment and subscribe because it really helps the podcast to be seen and heard. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.